I do think that good things can come out of bad. It's like beauty for ashes, that saying that it can happen. Now, that doesn't mean that the horrible thing isn't always present in your heart. The loss isn't always there, because it is, but it can be transformative if you allow it to be.
Welcome to Flip Your Script, the podcast about life's critical turning points and how people find the inspiration and motivation to move forward and rewrite their unique stories. Produced by Media Minefield, the show is hosted by Christy Peel, who flipped her script from an Emmy-winning journalist to a successful entrepreneur and speaker.
Today's Flip Your Script episode is powerful and personal. Angela Kennecke is a name everyone in the state of South Dakota knows. She's been a TV anchor at the dominant KELO TV for decades. She's in the state's Broadcasting Hall of Fame and has interviewed everyone from presidents to celebrities and uncovered some important investigative stories that have spurred legislative change. However, in 2018, Angela became part of a national story that caused her to flip her script in the most painful of ways. Today's episode is about finding meaning and speaking truth even when it's hard. Angela, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
You're welcome.
So we worked together for several years in the 90s, and I got to know you. I got to know your family. We've stayed in touch, and I got to know Emily, who was very little at the time, blonde and bubbly. And I remember coming into the newsroom and saw her grow up on Facebook. And then 2 years ago, a story that you were covering turned personal. Talk about that.
Well, first of all, I have very fond memories of working with you too. We've kept in touch over the years. I know it's not the same as living in another city, but you were always so kind and good reporter. I miss working with you. So it's so great to be able to reconnect with you in this way. So 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, actually, it's not quite, but getting very close. I was working on a story. I've been working on several stories since about 2015, 2014 on the opioid crisis. And I had been actually on the day that tragedy struck my family, I was working on a story on opioid or just overdoses in general and Good Samaritan laws in my state. And that evening, my daughter passed away from an overdose, which I don't know anything more tragic and also ironic, but we knew that there was a problem with Emily. We knew that she'd been a very rebellious teenager, and she'd gotten out on her own right away at 18. She'd started in college and art school, but didn't stay in college. She never wanted to really move back home because I think of the people she was associating with and the things that she was doing. We knew that she was a heavy marijuana smoker. I suspected some pills. I knew about maybe some pills in the Xanax type pills in that benzo category. But I didn't know that she was using heroin. But I knew there was a problem. So right when it really got to a point where she wouldn't accept any help, she wouldn't admit she was doing anything serious or anything that could jeopardize her life. As a family, we started working on an intervention for her. And we were planning that intervention, and we had met as a family on Saturday. And the intervention was planned for the following Saturday, because everybody would be off work and everybody would be available. And my daughter died on a Wednesday. That was Wednesday, May 16th of 2018. And when I was working on that story, I knew my daughter had a problem, but I never imagined it was heroin. I mean, I couldn't, or opioids. Couldn't imagine that. And what had happened was that she had a deadly dose of fentanyl in the heroin unknowingly. She didn't know that. And it doesn't take much fentanyl, very minuscule amount to kill somebody. And that's what happened. And I got that call in the evening. It was about 7:30 in the evening when I got the call. And I really truly believe, as you said, I'm heading into the second year, but I really truly believe the first year is just shock. I mean, there was no time to prepare, no time to think this was going to happen. And I mean, while I was scared, we were taking action to try to make sure she got help. I just couldn't have imagined that it would end this way.
I'm so sorry. And the thing that people don't understand, because I think unless you live there, TV anchors in South Dakota are a celebrity that I didn't understand it till I got there. I mean, it's kind of weird, right? Because in a big city, there's a different kind of state. There's a lot of different dominant television stations. There's maybe sports teams. There's all these other people. So, and yet in Sioux Falls in South Dakota, because KELO has been dominant for so long, the station you're at, and the signal reaches into Minnesota, Nebraska, and Iowa, and all the way across the state, and you've been there so long, people know you everywhere, grocery store. And I just want to give people who aren't familiar some kind of context, because you couldn't grieve privately. Everywhere you went, people know who you are, know what's going on. So how did you navigate that?
Well, initially, the shock of it, I was also having some horrible physical symptoms, anxiety symptoms. Like I tried to go to Walmart and I knew people would recognize me, and I had a horrible anxiety attack. I'm not someone who has experienced that before. I do believe that I was suffering from trauma. I think that when there is a sudden death, it's definitely injury to the brain, any kind of sudden, shocking, horrible, life-changing thing. I was lucky in that my station allowed me to take a few months off. I went on like short-term disability type, leave of absence for 3 months. And a lot of people came to my house. Occasionally I'd go see people that I knew, but I didn't really go out in public at all. I just couldn't handle it. And I didn't think I would ever be able to go back to work. Actually, I kind of thought I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I also, this is not how my daughter's life was supposed to turn out. This is not how my life was supposed to turn out. And I really thought, I had no control. What I've come to learn since then is that we have really very little control over anything. We don't have control over other people, that's for sure. We don't have control over, look at this coronavirus. I mean, we don't have control over what happens in our world. The only thing we have control over is our response to it. So I thought long and hard about that. And I thought, well, I've got 3 other children. I have a reason to live, and a husband, 3 other kids, and a loving husband. So reason to live and go on. This is what I do. I don't think now's the time for me to make a career switch. I don't think I'm up to that. I have to do what I know. I need health insurance. I need to keep, earning money and paying the mortgage and paying the bills. And so I thought I have to go back. And I thought, how am I going to go back? I mean, people were already, saying that my daughter had committed suicide, and not that there's shame in that, but that people had the story wrong. And I had to think long and hard about how I was going to go back to work, what I was going to do. And I decided that I was going to own my own story and my family's story and my daughter's story. And I was going to tell it. I was going to let other people tell it. I wasn't going to go through walking into the restaurant and having people in a corner booth say, oh, there's Angela Kennecke, and do you know what happened to her daughter? I thought, I'm going to tell them what happened, and I'm going to be upfront about it. And I don't want any other person, any other mom or dad or parent to go through what I've gone through. So I'm going to try to stop this from happening to other people. And I called up the station. I talked to our mutual friend, Beth Jensen, the news director there. And I said, I want to tell Emily's story, and I want to do a special on the opioid crisis. And she said, we were hoping that you would say that. And I had tremendous amount of support from some very loving coworkers. I mean, I really realized I had a family there. I think I always thought, they're my coworkers, and I like some of them, and some of them maybe I don't like. It's that way anywhere you work, right? But what I realized is that we truly were a family, and they had my back. They really did. And I told Emily's story, and I could never have predicted what followed. That's the thing. I just thought, I'm just going to put it out there. And then my friends were having a wine dinner that night, so they invited me. I put the story out. I went to this wine dinner. I shut my phone off, and I turned my phone on at midnight, and I was like, well, what is happening? Because it's like the whole world had seen this. I was getting calls to go to New York to go on CBS This Morning. I was getting all these requests from, national, international publications. And it sort of came at me really, really fast, where maybe it was good that I didn't really have time to think. And I just started saying, okay, yes, I'll do that. Yes, I'll talk about it. I'm talking about it. Might as well talk about it some more. And I wanted at the time, I really wanted people to understand that this is a disease, that addiction, I still want people to understand that addiction is a disease of the brain, that basically addiction hijacks the brain, and people lose control and they lose themselves. They really do. I wanted to do away with the shame and stigma. And I wanted people to understand that this could happen to anybody in any socioeconomic group. Emily was beautiful. I always think that she's one of the most beautiful girls in the world. And beauty doesn't protect you from this. Money doesn't protect you from this. Opportunities, if she had all the opportunities in the world. And I wanted people to know that this isn't about race or class or religion or anything like that. That this is a human condition that can happen to anybody, and it comes with so much pain. I just wanted to do my part to try to save somebody. One person, I don't care. I just wanted to make a difference and to save somebody the pain and anguish that I had been through and that my family's been through.
And you went from telling that story locally to nationally to internationally. What's it like to be part of the story and part of such a painful story that you had been telling for so long?
Right. As a journalist, I don't want to be the story. I don't want my family to be the story. I want to tell other people's stories. That's what I want to do. That's what I enjoy doing. But I guess, I'd asked so many parents over the years. There's different things that happen to people, different tragedies. I've asked people to talk following that. And I thought, how could I refuse to do that? I've expected other people to do it. How could I not do it? So I just made that decision, and it's not always easy. Sometimes I'm I wish I didn't have to keep telling this story, or we didn't have to keep talking about it. But I'm surprised that even now with the coronavirus, things have changed a little bit. But right before this happened, I just got done shooting a national public service announcement telling Emily's story on the opioid crisis, and partnering with another nonprofit out of New York to try to get the word out, to try to save more lives. And that aligns, with my mission. And it just keeps going. It just keeps taking different turns and twists and turns. And I just keep following that to see where it will lead. Because of my deep desire to help other people. And it's actually a little bit of a selfish desire. I feel like if I can channel my grief into helping other people, it doesn't come back just to shut me down. You see people that become consumed with their grief, become bitter. And I don't want to do that. So I just keep trying to help other people, and to try to do that with love and compassion, to try to turn my pain into purpose rather than to succumb to maybe the selfish desire to wallow in it.
And part of your purpose is removing or reducing the shame. And you as a mother must have felt that in a different way, because to report on other people's shame is way different than to say, oh, now I have this, and how do I deal with this? How have you gotten through that and been brave enough to say, this is the part of my daughter that, gosh, I wish wasn't there. And yet this is the part of my daughter that is going to be the legacy because it's going to help other people. How did you deal with it?
Well, my life really began falling apart about 7 years before Emily died, in terms of she was just out of control. And she's my oldest kid. And I was like, is this what teenagers are like? And no, the answer is no. Teenagers vary greatly. I've got 3 other ones. And my second daughter is about to turn 20 this summer. So she's still a teenager technically. And I had 7 years of sleepless nights, and I went through a lot, trying to sort of rein this child in, because I always liken it to a freight train. I felt like I was standing in front of this freight train saying, stop, stop. And the train just plowed me over. I couldn't stop it. There was no stopping it. It plowed me over with her death, really. But I had, I'd taken her to counselor after counselor. I put her into treatment program as a teenager, and she was kicked out for swearing at the counselor. She was just going to do what she wanted to do. And I couldn't get through to her. And I experienced a lot of shame at that time. I experienced what did I do wrong as a parent? And this was Christy, you know me, you saw how I tried to balance, working and raising small children. And I was a single parent for 6 years. I thought, was it because I was divorced? Did I do this because I was, did I do this to my daughter? Is this my fault? And I went through all those blame and shame emotions for a long time. And I don't know if it was the counseling I got or through prayer and meditation or what it was, but I started to really detach myself from the situation. Not detach. I mean, I still loved my daughter, but I realized that this isn't me. Like, this isn't about me. And I'm not that powerful. I don't have that kind of control. And so I was a little worried when I came out with her story, like, how would people react? And I've had people, of course, being in the public eye for so long, I've developed that shell, that kind of toughness, like, I don't care if people love me or they hate me. Like, I'm not going to take somebody's praise or somebody's criticism and internalize that and decide that that defines me. I know who I am, and I know what I've done and I know the mistakes I've made, and I know the right things that I've done, right? So if for someone else on the exterior, outside of me, to judge me, it just doesn't hold any water with me. So I put this story out there, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to hear all kinds of horrible things. And I was surprised, and I was prepared for that. But I was surprised to about 98% of the response was amazingly positive and loving and kind. Of course, there were some horrible comments that people made, but I just deleted those, and I just thought, there's always going to be, that's always going to happen. And I'm not going to internalize that. And I'm not ashamed of my daughter. I'm not. There was a time, when her parents started changing, and I was ashamed of what was happening. Now I understand the disease of addiction. I wish I understood it as well as I do now. I understand it so much better now. And I know who the real Emily was. And it doesn't matter if the whole world doesn't know that. I know that. So I don't have any shame. Not around this. I just don't. And I don't think we should have any shame or stigma around addiction. I really don't. But we do. I mean, obviously we do still, but I think that needs to end.
That's one of the most powerful things in watching you tell the story and be out there, is that you have owned it. And I love that you said that, own your story and control the narrative, and to really help other people with all of that. And it's not easy to say, here's everything, because we live in this world where let's put a filter on that on Instagram. Let's make that look even better than it is. And to go out there with what you've talked about has helped other people. You've started this nonprofit, and that's your flip your script, right? You went from, you're still a TV anchor, you're still a fantastic journalist, very talented, one of the best investigative reporters I've ever worked with. And now you're an advocate, and you have a nonprofit, and you're out there publicly. What has that shift been like for you? Because you're balancing not just the family and the profession, and now I'm an advocate, and I'm really speaking because of your voice and because you do have the platform. You're speaking on behalf of so many people who have shame or who have stigma, and you carry that. How's that been for you?
Well, when I was first asked to speak about it, to get up in front of an audience and speak about Emily, because well, not in the age of coronavirus, but in the last 2 years, I've done a lot of that, a lot of traveling, a lot of speaking. And you know what I thought? I thought the worst thing has already happened to me. So rejection, I think that one of our biggest fears as a human being is rejection, right? That our message is going to be rejected. We're going to be rejected. And I thought the worst thing's already happened to me. So what do I care? I really didn't care at all. So that enabled me to speak about it, because I thought, well, nothing worse can happen to me. So there you go. And then the desire to help other people. But I have not done this alone. That's the other, I think, very healing. And I'm not going to say I'm totally healed, and I will never be totally healed. So after you lose a child or a spouse, or I think anybody close to you, a parent, whatever, but especially I think a child, you don't move on, you move forward. But you also don't have to do it alone if you're willing to do it with an open heart. And what I've discovered is that so many people step forward to help me in this mission. That's the other thing. I couldn't have predicted the attention, but more important than the attention is that other people have said, let me help you. How can I help you? I mean, my husband helps. I could not run this nonprofit without him. And he has all the skills that I don't have, he has, right? So we complement each other very well. But not only that, it's helped my children. This nonprofit, Emily's Hope, is named after Emily. And to keep hope alive and to help other people. And we raise funds for addiction treatment. So it's a kind of a 3-tiered approach. The first thing we do is to educate, to stop the stigma, and to make people understand that addiction is a disease. And then we raise funds for treatment. and also with recovery, sober living houses and things like that. We partner with the treatment center in my community. And we hope to expand that in the future as well. But to do those things also took the shame away from Emily's siblings. So my other children realized, like, I don't have to be ashamed that my sister died in this way. This is a disease. And they've stepped forward to volunteer and to help with the organization, which I think has been so great for them. Plus, I had people like I did stories with, come forward and say, we want to organize a poker run for you, or let me help you with this art show, all these events that we do. And it's just snowballed. My board is amazing. I've got an attorney and a banker and other people and a psychiatrist, other people on my board who said, yes, we want to help you with this mission. So that and volunteers, that to me, in different organizations, that to me, I always talk about this when I speak to groups, like, this is where my hope stays alive. You know, and these people have helped me in this mission, and they've joined in my mission, and they've internalized it and made it their own as well. So that has been incredible, an incredible experience. So I do think that good things can come out of bad. It's like beauty for ashes, you know, that saying that it can happen. Now, that doesn't mean that the horrible thing isn't always present in your heart. You know, the loss isn't always there, because it is, but it can be transformative if you allow it to be.
And that's the beautiful part about sharing a story. When you share your story and you let people into the sacredness that is your own story, you're inviting them in to be part of that and to help. And that's one of the, you know, the gifts that you have in your publicity that you've given to this, is that other people now can be part of this and can come alongside or help or find hope. And how many people has Emily's hope helped in Sioux Falls? Hundreds, right?
I mean, it's hard to know. You know, I've heard anecdotal stories of people who heard her story and then realized they had a problem and checked themselves in to get help. I mean, addiction is a tough thing because, you know, there isn't a magic cure, right? It's a chronic disease people have to live with forever. So at least we're giving them a chance. But yeah, I would say dozens between the treatment center, the funds at the treatment center, and the funds at the sober living home. There's the network of Oxford sober living houses, and a couple of women saw Emily's story, recovering meth addicts, and decided that now was the time to start this. They've been talking about it, but they saw Emily's story and they thought, we need to do something. So that motivated them. And they named one of the houses for women and children the Emily's Hope House. And we've been able to provide funds for that house. And we've been able to provide things for the children and the women and help them get reemployed and things like that. So there really is a ripple effect. I don't think, was it Maya Angelou, I think, who told Oprah, like, you can't really know what your legacy is. Like, you don't know. I mean, I don't really know how many people we've helped. I just know I want to help more. I think that I just want to keep on and do whatever I can.
And helping one makes all that you're doing so worth it.
Right. That's what, sometimes when I get a little overwhelmed, because you're right, I am doing a lot. When I get a little overwhelmed, I stop and I think, even if just one mother doesn't have to go through what I went through, or even if one person just, you know, was able to find recovery and stay there and have a productive life for the ripple effect of that one life, you know, that is huge. So I remind myself of that all the time.
And the parents just knowing they're not alone. The feelings that they're having are normal. And you talking about that period before her death, I imagine that has helped a lot of people as well. Just the openness and the honesty and the transparency.
I think so. And I've heard a lot from a lot of people, especially right away. Like I heard from, there was a defense attorney in Wisconsin who lost his daughter in the same way. I heard from a doctor on the East Coast who lost his son in the same way. You know, I heard from a lot of people who said, I've been through the same thing. There's a judge in South Dakota. It doesn't really matter, you know, what you do for a living or who you are. Your kid can get ensnared in this, and it can happen to anybody. And I think the struggle for parents, we're all trying to, I wrote a blog recently about faking a perfect life long before social media. And I think on social media, we're all trying to put our best face forward, right? Like, here's the family, here's all the wonderful things we're doing. Well, a lot of those people are dealing with addiction in their families, and they're just not going to show it to you because of that shame involved. And I'm not saying everybody has to air everything out there, put everything out there. They don't have to. You can have your privacy. I didn't really feel like I had that option in my position to remain private. There are days where I kind of wish I had it, but for the most part, I'm really glad that I made this decision, just to do what I've done.
And you mentioned it a couple of times that we're living in this world of coronavirus and currently it's shelter in place in most states. How has what you've been through with Emily given you perspective and given your family perspective in this time that is unlike any other time the world has ever seen in our generation?
Well, I noticed when this first started, and because I'm in the news, I hear about everything. As you know, I'm hearing like all the stories from everywhere. And I noticed that I started feeling a little bit like I had right after Emily died, like that traumatic, like shock experience, of like, how am I going to handle this? And, but what I realized is I've always said since this started, and right away I started practicing this, that gratitude is the antidote for grief or stress or anxiety or any of those things. And so I really started thinking like, well, okay, we're all scared, right? We're scared. Fear is a factor in all of this, but what's really happening to me right now in the moment? Like, what do I have? I still have my job and I'm fortunate. So many people don't. I have my house. I can pay my bills. So I feel really bad for my other children because they're not doing what they plan. I've got a senior in high school and I have 2 kids in college, and it's very hard to come back home, but I have these kids home, close to me. And I kind of like that. I feel bad for them and I want them, to be out doing what they're supposed to be doing. There are benefits to it. So I'm trying to be grateful for everything that I have and I'm still able to do. And I know that this isn't forever, right? So we don't see a clear path out of this yet. I don't think anybody sees a perfectly clear path out of this yet, but we'll find it. We'll find our way. And I guess I don't give up that hope. I don't, I keep that.
And where can people, if they want to learn more about Emily, what you're doing, Emily's Hope, help out, where do they go? How can they help you?
So the organization is called Emily's Hope. And if you just Google that, you can find it. But the website, my daughter was a painter. She was an amazing artist. paintingapathtorecovery.org. That's our website. And I like you, I do a podcast that focuses on grief, coping and dealing with grief and addiction. And I also write a blog, and Emily's story is on there. And there's also resources on how to get help. And I'm working with a friend of mine who's also on this journey. She lost her stepson. Working on a page for families, resources for families as well, because that's often the biggest struggle with addiction. You want that person to get help, but they don't want to. So what can you do as a parent or as a spouse? And so we're working on that aspect of it too.
That's great. So the last question that I ask at the end of the podcast, is there a book or a quote or a song that got you through when there were days that you thought, boy, I don't know how I'm going to put one foot in front of another?
There is. So Emily was named after Emily Dickinson. And when she was little, we even had a book, a child's book about Emily Dickinson, the poet, because I love her. And I always loved this poem. And it's really helped me cope and helped me get through a lot of times, including this time. Hope is a thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. And that's what I think about. It hasn't stopped with Emily's death. Hope has not stopped with her death, and hope lives on.
Thank you so much for sharing and being part of the podcast and keeping that hope alive and helping other people. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So when I think about Angela's story, I love what she said about owning your story and letting people in because they do want to help and come alongside, and the power in stories and the perspective. And you can't control other people, but you can control your response to it. And that is something that is true, whether it's addiction or tragedy or coronavirus or just a bad day or a car accident. You can't control other people, but you can control your response to it. My hope is that Angela's Flip Your Script story empowers you to believe you're capable of more than you think, to discover motivation, to uncover inspiration, and to find the strength to turn the page.
Thank you for listening to Flip Your Script, hosted by Christy Peel and produced by Media Minefield. If you like our message, please be sure to give us a 5-star rating and subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also check out flipyourscriptpodcast.com for pictures, resources mentioned in the show, and information about our other great episodes.